Think about every significant relationship you have ever been in, every person who pulled you in deeply, every connection that started with an intensity that felt almost too good to be real, that feeling of finally being understood, finally being seen, finally meeting someone who matched the depth you had always been looking for. Now think about how those same relationships ended. The exhaustion, the confusion, the version of yourself you became inside them. Smaller, more anxious, more desperate to hold something together that kept slipping through your hands no matter how hard you tried. And here is the question that this video is going to answer. Why does this keep happening to the same kind of person? Why is it always the most caring, the most giving, the most emotionally aware people, the ones with the biggest hearts, who end up in these relationships again and again? The answer is not that you are broken. The answer is not that you are weak or naive or too trusting. The answer is that you were trained long before you ever met this person to find exactly them, and they were trained to find exactly you. And until that training is examined, the pattern does not stop. It just repeats with a different face. Before we get into why these two find each other, we need to understand who each of them actually is, not the internet version, the psychological one. An empath, in the psychological sense, is a person with an extraordinarily high capacity to feel what other people feel, not just to understand it intellectually, the way most people do, to actually absorb it, to walk into a room and feel the emotional temperature of everyone in it, to sit with someone in pain and feel that pain as if it were their own. This is a beautiful quality. It makes empaths extraordinary friends, partners, parents, counselors, the kind of person everyone wants near them when things are hard, the kind of person who notices things others miss, the slight change in someone's voice, the sadness behind a smile, the thing that is not being said. But this same quality comes with a shadow side that most empaths have never fully examined, because the empath does not just feel other people's pain, they feel responsible for it. They cannot easily witness suffering and do nothing. Something inside them, deep, instinctive, almost automatic, moves toward the pain, toward the wound, toward the person who needs fixing. That instinct, the move toward the wound, is where the story begins. Because the narcissist does not advertise their wound. They hide it beneath a performance so compelling, so perfectly calibrated to what the empath needs to see, that the empath does not recognize it as a wound at all. They experience it as a connection. The narcissist, at their core, has a wound they cannot reach, a deficit of genuine self-worth so deep that no amount of ordinary admiration ever quite fills it. They need a specific kind of supply, psychological term, narcissistic supply, to keep functioning. Attention, validation, the feeling that they are special, that they matter, that they are seen. Most people give this for a while, then stop, because most people have needs of their own, because most people eventually expect reciprocity. And the moment someone expects reciprocity, the moment they need something back, they become less useful to the narcissist. Sometimes they become a threat. But the empath gives without easily stopping. The empath has been taught, usually in childhood, that their value lies in what they provide to others, that love is something you earn by how well you tend to someone else's needs. that the way to keep people close is to make yourself indispensable to their emotional survival. So, to the narcissist, the empath is not just a partner, they are a source that does not run dry. A person whose entire relational wiring says, "Your needs come first. I will adjust. I will stay. I will try harder. I will not leave just because this is difficult." The narcissist did not choose the empath consciously. They found them the way a plant finds sunlight, by instinct, by design, by specific gravity of two complementary wounds pulling toward each other across a room.
This is the part people find hardest to accept, because from the outside, the question seems obvious. Why would anyone choose this? Why would a kind, caring, emotionally intelligent person be drawn to someone who ultimately drains them? The answer is that they are not drawn to the narcissist as the narcissist truly is. They are drawn to the narcissist as the narcissist appears in the beginning. And in the beginning, the narcissist is extraordinary. Psychologists call this the idealization phase. The narcissist, in the early stages of a relationship, turns on a quality of attention that most people have never experienced before. They make the empath feel like the most interesting, most beautiful, most important person who has ever existed. They remember everything. They call when they say they will. They seem to understand things about the empath that even the empath's oldest friends have missed. This is sometimes called love bombing, and to someone who has spent their life giving to others and not quite receiving that quality of attention back, it feels like finally arriving somewhere they have always been trying to get to. But there is something else underneath the attraction, something older than this relationship. The empath, in most cases, grew up in a home where love was conditional or unpredictable, where a parent, often the most important one, was emotionally unavailable, critical, or difficult to reach. And the child learned to work for love, to earn it, to adjust themselves in pursuit of it. So when the narcissist's warmth begins to fluctuate, when the idealization starts to shift, when the criticism begins, when the love starts to feel earned rather than given, the empath does not recognize this as a warning. They recognize it as home, the familiar feeling of someone's love requires effort to keep, and they move towards it, because moving towards it is all they have ever known. What makes this pattern so difficult to escape is that it is not a straight line, it is a cycle, and every stage of the cycle has a psychological function that keeps the empath inside it. Stage 1, idealization. The narcissist makes the empath feel extraordinary, seen, chosen, understood. The intensity of this phase is unlike anything the empath has ever experienced. This is not an accident, it is the hook, and it is so powerful that the memory of it will keep the empath returning long after the relationship has changed into something unrecognizable. Stage 2, devaluation. Slowly, the warmth begins to cool. The criticism begins, small at first, then consistent. The empath is too sensitive, too needy, not as interesting that they seemed. The empath, desperate to return to the feeling of stage 1, works harder, tries to be better, blames themselves. The narcissist's need for power is fed. The cycle continues. Stage 3, discard. The narcissist withdraws, emotionally, sometimes physically. The empath is left confused, grieving a relationship that has technically not ended, but no longer feels alive. They may reach out repeatedly. They apologize for things they did not do. The silence from the narcissist is its own kind of communication. Chase me, prove yourself, earn your way back. Stage 4, hoovering. named after the vacuum brand because the narcissist sucks the empath back in. A message, a gesture, a moment of the old warmth returning, just enough to reactivate the empath's hope. This is the most dangerous stage because the empath, flooded with relief and the memory of stage 1, believes the relationship is healing. It is not healing. The cycle is simply beginning again. Stage 5, reset. Back to idealization. A little warmer again, a little more attentive. The empath exhales. They tell themselves it was a rough patch, that growth is not linear, that love is worth fighting for. And they are right that love is worth fighting for. They are wrong about who this person is. The cycle resets and begins again.
This is why people stay, not because they are foolish, but because the cycle is designed, not consciously, but structurally, to keep them inside it. The intermittent reinforcement of warmth and withdrawal is one of the most powerful psychological conditioning mechanisms that exists. It is the same mechanism used in gambling. The unpredictability of the reward makes the pursuit more compulsive, not less. Here is what most people never understand about this dynamic. The attraction is not a mistake. It is not a failure of judgment. It is two people whose early wounds fit together so precisely that in the beginning, the relationship feels like healing. The narcissist's wound says, I am only lovable when I am performing, when I am special, when I am being admired. The empath's wound says, I am only lovable when I am needed, when I am helpful, when I am making someone else's life better. Together, these two wounds complete each other. The narcissist needs someone to admire them. The empath provides it. The empath needs someone to need them. The narcissist provides it. In the beginning, this feels like compatibility. It feels like being chosen. It feels like two people who were made for each other finally finding their way home. What it actually is two unhealed childhood wounds recognizing each other across a room and mistaking the recognition for love. This is not said to make the love feel less real. The feelings are real. The connection is real. What is not real is the belief that this is the only place those needs can be met. The empath's need to be needed can be met in a relationship that also gives back. The wound can heal, but it requires recognizing it as a wound first, and not as a personality trait, not as just being someone who loves deeply, but as a place inside them that was shaped by pain and has been making decisions ever since. Breaking this pattern does not begin with finding a different partner. It begins with understanding why you kept finding this one. Because if the wound is not examined, it will simply locate the next person who activates it. The face changes, the dynamic does not. 1. Learn to distinguish intensity from intimacy. The beginning of a narcissistic relationship feels overwhelming because it is designed to. Real intimacy builds slowly. It feels safe, not electric. It does not make you feel chosen one day and invisible the next. If a relationship feels like an addiction in the first month, that is information. Pay attention to it. 2. Examine where you learned that love requires work. Most empaths who fall into this pattern had a parent whose love was conditional or inconsistent. They learned early that the way to keep love was to earn it. That lesson is running in the background of every relationship they enter. Bringing it into the foreground, in therapy, in honest self-reflection, is where the pattern begins to loosen. 3. Practice receiving without giving first. This is a specific and difficult exercise for empaths because giving is their default language of connection. But a relationship where you are always giving is not a connection. It is a transaction where one person is always in debt. Learn what it feels like to let someone care for you before you have done anything to earn it. That discomfort is the wound speaking. That is exactly where to look. 4. Understand that leaving is not failure. The empath's instinct is to stay, to fix, to believe that more love will eventually be enough. It will not be enough. Not because love is insufficient, but because the narcissist's wound cannot be healed from the outside. It requires work that only they can do. Leaving is not giving up on love. It is choosing to reserve that love for somewhere it can actually be received. You cannot love someone into wholeness if they do not believe they need healing, and you cannot find wholeness yourself while you are pouring everything you have into someone else's emptiness. The pattern breaks when the empath understands that their need to be needed is not love. It is the wound trying to make itself useful. And the wound deserves rest, not another person to fix. Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Most people who repeat this pattern do not call it a wound. They call it their type. They call it bad luck. They call it just how love goes for someone like me. It is not fate. It is a pattern, and patterns once seen clearly can be changed. Not instantly, not without difficulty, but changed, genuinely permanently changed, in a way that fate cannot be. The empath who understands this pattern is not less loving for understanding it. They are more free. Free to love in a direction that actually leads somewhere. Free to stop calling the familiar thing the right thing. Free to find out what connection feels like when it does not cost them who they are. The most important thing in the world is to learn to give out love and to let it come in. Maury Schwartz. The love you have given so freely to people who could not hold it, you deserve to feel that love pointed at yourself. That is not selfishness. That is where the healing lives. If this reached something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel. Next week, we go into the one nobody wants to talk about. Children who grow up with a narcissistic parent. What it does to them, what they carry without knowing, and what it takes to finally put it down. That one is next.